The tremendous shifts in European military might will be examined. France and Britain remain strong powers, but what happens when Finland and Sweden join NATO? Germany, which has trailed in military investment, is turning around and aiming to become a powerhouse. Let's examine this enormous upheaval and Europe's future. German introspection. Before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, one of Europe's most feared militaries had a spotty record. In the late 2010s, reports emerged of the unexpected devolution of one of the world's most powerful fighting forces into a glorified volunteer fire department, with revered mountain troops shoveling snow from Bavaria roofs instead of conducting cutting-edge military exercises. What happened to the once proud Bundeswehr? There's so much it's hard to start. Most things happen in context, including Germany's current circumstances. The problems stem from the conclusion of the Cold War, when Germans had hope and opportunity. After the Berlin Wall fell, East and West Germany reintegrated, and the USSR collapsed as a regional military adversary. Germany's security outlook changed overnight. Suddenly, the German parliament's military spending had to be redirected to economic, political, and social reform. There was no immediate military danger to justify Cold War military investment. The country and its people, still recovering from 2 world wars, felt they could draw down their military capabilities without risking their safety, because NATO and, more importantly, the US could guarantee Europe's long-term security. This began in the early 1990s. Few expected it would continue almost non-stop until 2022. This causes Germany's military vulnerability today. Germany's domestic emphasis led to economic success. However, this decision cost them a lot of military funding. The result is chronic labor and material shortages. By late 2018, Germany had 68 Tiger attack helicopters, but only 20% could fly. The country had 136 Eurofighters, but only 30% were airworthy. Pilots left the German Air Force in droves due to its dire situation. Huge labor and material shortage. Germany's only nuclear-capable aircraft, the Tornado fighters, were also to be retired. According to accounts, the infantry has had ammo and underwear shortages due to military deterioration. The Heckler & Koch G36, the German military's main battle rifle, was retired in 2019 after accuracy studies found major issues. Too much heat causes the pistol to miss. American officials were disappointed to find Bundeswehr forces using unprotected mobile phones due to a lack of secure radio equipment at a Lithuanian outpost where 450 German soldiers were stationed as part of a NATO mission to protect Europe's eastern flank. Equipment shortages and recruiting issues arose. The poor living conditions at Germany's military barracks were revealed by many potential recruits as the country sought to recruit 2,000 troops. Germany must now consider an unthinkable alternative: recruiting foreigners to fill gaps. Its legal issue is that German law only enables citizens to join the military. German military weaknesses became so clear that high-ranking Bundeswehr officers declared that everywhere you look, there's dysfunction. Germany's friends may have wondered why the Germans were only bad at war when we were on their side. Germany's most vocal critic was its friend, the US, which it couldn't afford to anger. Toward the end of his 4-year presidency, Donald Trump pressured Germany to increase its defense spending and achieve the recommended NATO requirement of 2% of GDP. If Angela Merkel, the German chancellor and leader of the center-right bloc of politicians most critics blamed for decades of low military spending, tried to change the Bundeswehr, it would be impossible to do so overnight. Industrial capacity, financial and organizational strength, research and development, and political and social backing all contribute to power. As she faced Trump's criticism in 2019, German Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen claimed this was a multi-front war. "I wish things would progress faster, but 25 years of shrinking and cuts can't be undone in a few years." In the early 2020s, Germany aimed to reverse 25 years of austerity and decline. Germany spent hundreds of millions of dollars on outside consultants to clean up the army's mess, possibly the most German thing it could do. When their findings and recommendations failed to correct course, the German parliament formed a special investigative committee to investigate procurement irregularities and accusations that consultants were given sweetheart deals and too much influence. Hundreds of millions of euros didn't even scratch the surface of the world's most industrialized nation's GDP, but it showed the country's chronic mismanagement and lack of strategic thinking on military modernization. Hans-Peter Bartels, Parliamentary Commissioner for the Armed Forces from 2015 to 20, said, "Everything takes too long and costs money. Time and money seem inexhaustible, yet no one takes responsibility." Will Germany stay silent? Germany's historical aversion to armed conflict left it heavily reliant on the U.S.'s 33,000 troops and nuclear umbrella, while avoiding robust military investment. Despite rising threats from Russia and China in the early 2020s, German focus remained on Trump's NATO withdrawal threats rather than their implications. This created a false sense of security, further supported by strong economic ties to its ideological adversaries. However, everything changed on February 24, 2022. Putin's invasion of Ukraine marked a turning point. Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced a dramatic increase in defense spending, pledging to meet NATO's 2% GDP target for the first time since 1990. 3 days into the war, Scholz called this a change of era, committing to a significant military overhaul. His $100 billion war chest for upgrades received 75% public approval and marked a new direction for Germany's defense policy. Since then, Germany has supplied Ukraine with significant military aid, including Leopard tanks, Iris-T air defense systems, and various vehicles, munitions, and drones. While these efforts highlight Germany's shift, familiar reluctance to long-term military commitments is beginning to resurface, showing the complexity of maintaining this new trajectory. The defense industry lacks strategy. After 20 years of neglect, opponents are again complaining that Berlin lacks a defense industry plan. Spending 100 billion euros won't guarantee military power. Many expected Germany to reinvest in its defense industry, as the U.S. has done since the Ukraine conflict began, but Berlin has been criticized for investing in U.S. defense corporations. A major tank gearbox manufacturer said in July 2023 that over half of the $100 billion in special cash went to American defense companies. Renq Group CEO Suzanne Wiegand said Germany lacks a defense industrial strategy. The French handle this better. Wiegand said the special fund should help develop future technologies as well as fill short-term shortfalls in the German military's stockpiles. This makes logical, yet Scholz hasn't used his special fund a year after promising. German military unpreparedness has been revealed in numerous reports during the past year. One headline says Germany's troops utilized broomsticks instead of machine weapons due to bureaucracy. A top Christian Democratic Union foreign policy official told a German news outlet in February 2023 that the military had lost a year but was better than in 2022. Indeed, the German Defense Ministry had ordered several F-35 fighter jets, heavy transport helicopters, and a program to digitize the Bundeswehr's outdated digital communications and networking capabilities. Interest rates on Parliament's borrowing for the 100 billion euro special fund jumped from 8 billion to 13 billion euros, leaving only 87 billion euros to spend, not including inflation and value-added taxes, which are expected to cut another 15 billion euros from the ledger books. One expert said inflation and interest payments will continue to erode this money pile the longer it sits around. However, German military minister Boris Pistorius has recently argued that the 100 billion euro special budget is insufficient to meet the Bundeswehr's eye-opening needs. He has gently requested financial hikes of tens of billions of euros to avoid political and public pressure, but some believe Germany must do far more to become Europe's defense backbone. In February 2024, Pistorius suggested that Germany may need to exceed its 2% objective, which it did for the first time this year, to reverse 2 decades of low military spending. He told the German parliament that industry development must be coordinated. We could reach 3 to 3.5%. It relies on international events. Germany is at a turning point. The government spent 52.8 billion euros on defense in 2021, 7th globally, ahead of France, but behind Russia and the UK. It ranked 15th among the 20 largest global economies in GDP percent. As Germany meets its renewed spending commitments, it may rise in the rankings. Spending 76.1 billion euros per year would place it ahead of Russia, India, and the UK. It would lead the EU, but behind the US and China. More crucially, increasing military investment will allow Germany to finally back its rhetorical and economic leadership of Europe with steel. Germany's allies and enemies were sluggish to take it seriously in defense. A military superpower. Today, this may change. Germany wants a modern, high-tech, formidable military. The F-35s, future combat air systems developed with France, naval fleet modernization, and drone warfare modifications are positive steps. Germany must spend prudently for the foreseeable future to become a military superpower. It must weigh the spear tail equally. Tip: logistics, intelligence, cyber warfare, training, and experience. High-tech weaponry, vehicles, and gear. As said, Germany still gets the basics wrong. It must handle what it's neglected for years to secure itself and its European and regional allies and partners. It must operate its helicopters, planes, and tanks. It must repair 50% of military hardware that is broken. It needs finance and social support to build public esteem for the German military and overcome its chronic personnel and resource shortages. Pistorius recently argued that Germany's wartime experience lowers the prestige of military jobs. Most sources indicate that this would require a distinct cultural change that went beyond business, as usual, but with more money. Germany can prove its skeptics wrong by fully assuming European security. Europe is in a state of great insecurity, but Germany's resolve to develop a credible military with deterrent capability could benefit the West. U.S. support for Ukraine is more dubious than ever. Depending on the 2024 American presidential election, Germany and France may have to pay their dues. If the invasion of Ukraine raised the threat at their doorsteps, declining American political and financial support may drive them to increase defense expenditure, overhaul arms production, and help Ukraine in areas where it's falling short. The Estonian Defense Ministry calculated that Western countries would need to contribute 0.25% of their GDP in military support to Ukraine to defend itself in 2024 and launch a new counteroffensive in 2025. Germany, the richest European nation, must lead Europe's defense efforts. It has to overcome its cumbersome procurement system, which one analyst described as perfectionist in its regulations, which often prevents troops from getting what they need. This is seen in German tank personnel not obtaining standardized radio equipment, like NATO partners, Germany's political coalitions at odds over military modernization urgency, and more. Germany can be delighted that their procurement perfectionism has mostly subsided. The arms industry has been working harder to improve capacity, such as building a Rheinmetall munitions complex that can produce 2,000 artillery shells a year, but this may not be enough. Germany is reorganizing and filling holes in its military over a period. Given its history, Germany's defense operations since Russia's invasion have been revolutionary. Scholz and Germany's coalition government must decide whether to implement a military modernization strategy that will determine the country's military agenda for decades, or whether it will fail due to political change. You think? Share in the comments. To avoid missing new stuff, like, share, and subscribe if you like this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.